What if everything you learned about the discovery of America was incomplete? For generations, millions of people believe that Christopher Columbus was the first European to reach the New World. But centuries before Columbus ever sailed across the Atlantic, another group of fearless explorers had already crossed one of the most dangerous oceans on Earth. They had no compass, no modern maps, and no guarantee they would ever return. Guided only by the stars, the wind, and extraordinary courage, these sailors reached the shores of North America nearly 500 years before Columbus's famous voyage. Their story remained hidden for centuries, buried beneath myths, forgotten legends, and ancient ruins. Today, historians and archaeologists have uncovered remarkable evidence that reveals one of history's greatest adventures. This is the incredible story of the Vikings and the legendary explorer Leif Erikson. The story begins in the icy lands of Scandinavia, where the Vikings built a reputation as some of the world's most skilled sailors. Living in what is now Norway, Denmark, and Sweden, they mastered the sea with their fast and flexible longships, allowing them to travel farther than almost any other people of their time. While many remember the Vikings as fierce warriors, they were also traders, craftsmen, and explorers driven by curiosity and opportunity. Around the year 1000 CE, a young Norse explorer named Leif Erikson, the son of Eric the Red, set sail west from Greenland. According to Icelandic sagas, stories from sailors spoke of a mysterious land beyond the horizon, rich with forests and natural resources. Hoping to explore these unknown shores, Leif and his crew crossed the cold and unpredictable North Atlantic Ocean, facing powerful winds, rough seas, and thick fog along the way. After days at sea, they reached a new coastline unlike the rocky landscapes of Greenland. The land offered forests, freshwater rivers, and abundant wildlife. Leif named part of this region Vinland, a place described in Norse traditions as fertile and promising. For people coming from Greenland, where large forests were scarce, the discovery of timber alone was incredibly valuable. For centuries, many historians debated whether these stories were legends or real history. Then, in the 1960s, archaeologists uncovered the remains of a Norse settlement at L'Anse aux Meadows in present-day Newfoundland, Canada. The site contained the foundations of Viking buildings, ironworking evidence, and artifacts that confirmed Norse explorers had reached North America around the year 1000. Today, this discovery is widely recognized as the earliest confirmed European settlement in North America. Although the Viking settlement did not grow into a permanent colony, their voyage proved something extraordinary. Europeans had successfully crossed the Atlantic Ocean centuries before Columbus. Their achievement demonstrated remarkable navigation skills and expanded the known world for future generations. Yet the Viking presence in North America was brief. Distance, limited supplies, and the challenges of maintaining contact with Greenland made long-term settlement difficult. Over time, the settlement was abandoned, and its story gradually faded from memory, surviving mainly through Norse sagas passed down across generations. Nearly 500 years later, another wave of European explorers would sail west in search of new trade routes. Their voyages would permanently connect Europe and the Americas, changing the course of world history forever. But before that transformation began, it was the Vikings who first left confirmed European footprints on the shores of North America. The Viking voyage was only the beginning. Centuries later, powerful kingdoms across Europe would launch ambitious expeditions across the Atlantic, searching for wealth, trade, and new opportunities. Among those explorers was a sailor whose name would become one of the most famous in history, Christopher Columbus. In the next chapter, we follow the voyage that changed the relationship between Europe and the Americas forever. For nearly 5 centuries after the Vikings reached the shores of North America, their remarkable journey faded into history. Europe entered a new age of powerful kingdoms, growing trade, and great ambition. Valuable goods such as spices, silk, and precious metals traveled from Asia to Europe. But the traditional trade routes had become expensive, difficult, and increasingly controlled by competing empires. Kings and queens began searching for a new route to Asia, one that crossed the vast Atlantic Ocean, a sea that many believed was simply too dangerous to cross. Among those who believed the western route was possible was an experienced sailor from Genoa named Christopher Columbus. After years of presenting his idea to different European rulers, Columbus finally received support from Queen Isabella I and King Ferdinand II of Spain. Their goal was clear: discover a faster sea route to Asia, strengthen Spain's position in global trade, and expand the kingdom's influence. In August 1492, Columbus departed from Spain with 3 ships, the Nina, the Pinta, and the Santa Maria, along with a crew willing to sail into waters that few Europeans had ever attempted to cross. The Atlantic was far larger than Columbus expected. Days turned into weeks, and the endless horizon showed no sign of land. The crew grew anxious as food and fresh water became more limited. Some feared they would never return home. Despite the uncertainty, Columbus remained committed to continuing west. Then, in the early hours of October 12, 1492, a lookout spotted land in the distance. After more than 2 months at sea, the expedition had reached an island in the Caribbean, part of a region completely unknown to most Europeans at the time. Columbus believed he had reached islands near Asia, which is why he referred to the local inhabitants using a name connected to the Indies. Today, historians know that he had instead arrived in the Caribbean, a region that was already home to thriving indigenous communities with their own cultures, languages, trade networks, and traditions developed over countless generations. The encounter marked the beginning of a new chapter in world history, bringing together societies that had developed separately across the Atlantic for thousands of years. Encouraged by the voyage, Columbus returned to Spain with news of new lands and future opportunities. His reports inspired additional expeditions, and over the following years he completed several more voyages across the Atlantic. Although he never realized he had encountered continents previously unknown to Europeans, his expeditions transformed European understanding of the world. Maps were redrawn, new sea routes were established, and exploration accelerated as other kingdoms sought to learn more about these distant lands. The years that followed reshaped history on a global scale. New exchanges of plants, animals, technologies, and ideas connected Europe and the Americas in ways that would influence economies, cultures, and societies for centuries. At the same time, these encounters brought profound challenges and lasting consequences for many indigenous communities. Historians continue to study this period from multiple perspectives, recognizing both the extraordinary achievements in navigation and the complex human impact that followed. Christopher Columbus did not set out to discover a new continent. His mission was to reach Asia by sailing west. Yet his voyage permanently changed the relationship between Europe and the Americas, opening an era of exploration that would shape the future of the United States and much of the modern world. Soon, explorers from Spain, France, and England would launch ambitious expeditions of their own, each hoping to claim new lands, establish settlements, and expand their nation's influence across North America. The race had begun. Across the Atlantic, Europe's greatest maritime powers prepared fleets for even larger expeditions. What started as one daring voyage would soon become an international competition that would redefine maps, reshape empires, and lay the foundations for future colonies in North America. In the next chapter, we follow the Spanish, French, and English explorers whose journeys would forever change the history of the continent. Columbus's voyages had revealed that vast lands lay across the Atlantic, and the news spread through Europe with incredible speed. What had begun as a search for a western route to Asia soon evolved into something much larger. Powerful kingdoms realized that these newly encountered lands offered opportunities for exploration, trade, and settlement unlike anything they had imagined. Among all European nations, Spain moved first and fastest. Backed by experienced sailors, royal support, and growing confidence, Spanish expeditions began sailing across the Atlantic year after year, determined to learn more about the continent that stretched far beyond the Caribbean islands. Their explorers entered unfamiliar coastlines, crossed dense forests, navigated enormous rivers, and traveled across vast grasslands that seemed to have no end. One of the earliest explorers was Juan Ponce de León, who sailed north and reached the peninsula he named La Florida in 1513. Although he was searching for new opportunities and territory for Spain, his voyage became one of the earliest recorded European expeditions to what is now the continental United States. His reports introduced Europeans to an entirely different landscape filled with wetlands, forests, and rich wildlife. As Spanish exploration continued, new expeditions pushed farther into the interior. Hernando de Soto led one of the most ambitious journeys ever attempted in North America. For years, his expedition crossed thousands of miles to the southeastern regions of the continent, becoming one of the first European groups known to have reached and crossed the mighty Mississippi River. Along the way, the explorers encountered numerous indigenous nations, each with its own language, traditions, leadership, and well-established communities. These societies had lived across the continent for countless generations, developing sophisticated cultures long before European ships appeared on the horizon. Farther west, another Spanish explorer, Francisco Vázquez de Coronado, organized a massive expedition across what is now the American Southwest. Stories had reached Spanish settlements about magnificent cities filled with unimaginable wealth, inspiring explorers to search for places that became known in legend as the Seven Cities of Gold. Although no such golden cities were found, Coronado's journey dramatically expanded European knowledge of the interior of North America. His expedition crossed deserts, climbed rugged mountains, explored immense canyons, and traveled across the endless Great Plains, where they witnessed enormous herds of American bison unlike anything Europeans had ever seen. Every expedition added new information to European maps, gradually replacing mystery with observation and transforming blank spaces into recognizable landscapes. Exploration was no longer limited to the coastline. It had become a journey deep into the heart of an enormous continent. To protect their growing influence, Spain established permanent settlements, missions, and forts in strategic locations. In 1565, the settlement of St. Augustine was founded in present-day Florida. Today, it is recognized as the oldest continuously occupied European established city in what is now the continental United States. From this important base, Spain strengthened its presence across the southeast while continuing to explore new territories. By the end of the 16th century, Spain had become the dominant European power across much of the Americas. Yet its success also attracted the attention of rival kingdoms. France watched closely from across the Atlantic. England prepared its own ambitious voyages, and a new international competition was beginning. The race to explore and influence North America had only just begun, and the next expeditions would reshape the future of the continent in ways no one could yet imagine. As Spain expanded its influence across the Americas, other European kingdoms watched with growing determination. The wealth flowing back to Spain captured the attention of rival powers, and before long, France and England launched ambitious expeditions of their own. Their goal was not simply to explore unknown coastlines, but to discover new trade routes, establish lasting settlements, and secure a place in the rapidly changing world. By the beginning of the 16th century, the Atlantic Ocean had transformed from a mysterious barrier into a busy highway connecting Europe with North America. A new era of international competition had begun, and every successful voyage brought another kingdom one step closer to expanding its influence across the continent. Among the earliest explorers sailing under the English flag was John Cabot, an Italian navigator supported by King Henry VII of England. In 1497, Cabot crossed the North Atlantic and reached the northeastern coast of North America. Although he did not establish a permanent settlement, his voyage provided England with an important claim that would later shape its ambitions in the New World. His reports described rich fishing grounds and vast stretches of unexplored coastline, encouraging future English expeditions to return across the Atlantic. While England looked toward the northern coastline, France also entered the race. In 1534, the French explorer Jacques Cartier sailed into the Gulf of St. Lawrence and explored the great river that now bears its name. His expeditions opened the door to French exploration deep into the interior of North America, revealing a network of rivers that could serve as natural highways for trade and discovery. Over the following decades, French explorers developed strong trading relationships with many indigenous communities, especially to the valuable fur trade, which became one of the most important economic activities in New France. At the beginning of the 17th century, another French explorer, Samuel de Champlain, founded the settlement of Quebec in 1608. Unlike many earlier expeditions that focused mainly on exploration, Champlain worked to establish a lasting colony built on cooperation, trade, and geographic knowledge. His detailed maps greatly improved European understanding of northeastern North America, and his efforts earned him the title Father of New France. Meanwhile, England intensified its own colonial ambitions. In 1585, Sir Walter Raleigh sponsored an English settlement on Roanoke Island, located along the Atlantic coast of present-day North Carolina. The colony faced enormous challenges, including limited supplies and difficult living conditions. When English ships eventually returned with additional settlers, the entire community had disappeared without a clear explanation. The mysterious disappearance of the Roanoke colonists became one of the greatest unsolved mysteries in early American history and has fascinated historians for centuries. Although Roanoke failed, England did not abandon its dream of building permanent colonies in North America. Every expedition provided valuable experience, revealing both the opportunities and the difficulties of establishing settlements across the Atlantic. By the early 17th century, Spain controlled vast territories in the south. France had strengthened its influence across the north through exploration and trade, and England was preparing to build colonies that would eventually change the future of the continent. Three powerful European kingdoms were now competing for land, resources, and influence across North America, while indigenous nations continued to shape the continent with their own long-established societies, alliances, and traditions. This growing rivalry would define the next chapter of American history. In 1607, England finally established its first permanent successful colony at Jamestown, Virginia. That single settlement would become the foundation of Britain's future colonies in North America and mark the beginning of a completely new era that would ultimately lead to the birth of the United States. Asterisk, the age of exploration was coming to an end, but the age of settlement had only just begun. Across the forests and rivers of Virginia, a small English colony faced hunger, disease, and uncertainty. Against overwhelming odds, Jamestown struggled to survive, unaware that its success will one day help shape the history of an entirely new nation. In the next chapter, we explore the remarkable story of Jamestown, the first permanent English settlement in North America.